Hello, everyone, and welcome to Speak Easy English, the place where you learn English simply and easily. Let's start today's lesson.
Picture this scenario, and I guarantee you've been here if you were trying to learn a new language.
Oh, I already know where this is going.
Right. So you're at a cafe or maybe a work conference, and someone asks you a relatively simple question in that target language.
Just a basic everyday interaction.
Exactly. And you know the vocabulary. I mean, you've drilled the grammar rules on your phone for months.
You put in the work.
You really have. But in that exact moment, this biological event happens. Your heart rate ticks up, your pupils might even dilate slightly, and your brain completely freezes.
Total system failure.
Yes. You are standing there, smiling awkwardly, while inside your head, a frantic, highly inefficient translation process is happening.
Like a hamster on a wheel.
Right. You construct the thought in your native language first, and then you start dragging it across the mental border word by painful word, searching for the exact matching equivalents.
Which takes forever, neurologically speaking.
It does. And by the time you've built this architecturally perfect sentence and are ready to deliver it, well, the person you're talking to has looked away.
The conversation has drifted.
Yeah, you are left holding this beautifully constructed thought that is now completely useless.
It's an incredibly frustrating experience, and from a neurological standpoint, it's basically the equivalent of trying to run, modern software on a dial-up modem.
A dial-up modem, wow. That really paints a picture.
It's true, though. The data is all there, sitting in your memory banks, but the retrieval mechanism you are using is completely bottlenecked.
So it's not that I forgot the words.
No, exactly. What you are describing isn't a failure of memory. It is a failure of pathway.
Okay, unpack that for me. A failure of pathway.
Right. So when you translate, you are treating the second language as an analytical puzzle to be decoded rather than a motor reflex to be deployed.
I see.
You are routing the information through the prefrontal cortex, the slow, deliberate, conscious part of your brain, when it really needs to be coming from the faster automatic processing centers.
And that is the exact hurdle we are tackling today in this deep dive.
It's a big one.
It really is. We've got a fascinating stack of source materials and transcripts detailing 10 highly specific, realistic daily habits designed to circumvent that slow, analytical brain.
Bypassing the bottleneck completely.
Exactly. The entire mission of this deep dive is to figure out how you can actually start thinking in English.
Really thinking, not just translating.
Right. And to be clear right up front, the material explicitly states we are not talking about dedicating 2 hours a day to staring at a textbook.
Definitely not.
You don't need to download 5 new language apps or hire a private tutor.
Which is the fundamental paradigm shift here. The sources we are looking at identify a massive psychological barrier for learners, which they call the myth of the perfect routine.
The perfect routine.
Right. Yeah. People assume that thinking in a new language is this Zen-like state of fluency that requires intense, isolated concentration.
Like you need a mountain retreat to learn verbs.
Exactly. But fluency isn't a state you suddenly unlock. It is an accumulation of micro-connections built in the messy reality of everyday life.
Okay, let's unpack this concept of the perfect routine because the source material has this anecdote that I found honestly painfully relatable.
Oh, the coffee story.
Yes, the coffee story. They describe a learner who decided they were finally going to conquer this hurdle.
They were feeling very motivated.
Super motivated. They made a fresh cup of coffee, sat down at their pristine desk, closed their eyes, and announced to themselves, I am going to think purely in English for the next 5 minutes.
A noble but fundamentally flawed experiment.
Right, because after exactly 40 seconds, this person's brain essentially just threw up a white flag and shut down.
40 seconds. That's really fast.
It is. They wanted to generate a thought as simple as, this coffee is too hot.
But they couldn't just think it.
No, the process they used was to formulate it in their native tongue, manually pull up the English vocabulary, check it against grammar rules, and midway through that, they lost the thread of what they were even trying to do.
Overloaded the system.
Yeah, they noted that they felt entirely defeated by a cup of coffee in under a minute.
If we look at the cognitive load happening in that 40-second window, the failure makes perfect sense.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not just a lack of willpower.
Not at all. Your brain is a metabolic miser. It wants to conserve energy at all costs.
Okay, so it's lazy.
Basically, yes. Your native language is a highly optimized low-energy highway. When you sit down and try to force a marathon session of thinking in a new language without having first paved any automated neurological pathway.
That just crash.
Exactly. Your brain immediately recognizes the massive energy expenditure. It feels the strain of holding the native thought in working memory while simultaneously scanning long-term memory for second language equivalents.
So it's just juggling too many things at once.
It's too much simultaneous processing. So the brain does what it does best. It rebels and defaults to the most efficient route, which is your native tongue.
It seems a lot like deciding you want to be a marathon runner, and on day one, without having ever jogged to the end of your driveway, you try to sprint 10 miles.
That's a great way to put it.
You don't just fail, you injure yourself, and you hate the process.
That analogy holds up perfectly on a neurological level. When we retreat to translation, it's because translation feels safe.
It's the driveway.
Right. Your native language is your safety net. To construct a sentence directly in a second language means stepping out on a tightrope without that net.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You are exposed to the risk of making an error, of sounding foolish, even just to yourself.
Well, I judge myself so harshly when I mess up in my own head.
We all do. So the brain's defense mechanism is to build the sentence in the safe language first, inspect it for structural integrity, and then translate it over. And the problem is, long, intense, traditional study sessions often accidentally reinforce this exact analytical defensive approach.
So the goal of the habits outlined in our sources is to shift away from that defensive posture entirely.
Absolutely.
There's a phrase in the material that I want to use as our North Star today, moving from study time to a lifetime in English.
I love that phrase. Integrating the language so deeply into your daily existence that it ceases to be a subject you study and becomes a lens through which you experience the world.
Let's look at how that actually begins, practically speaking. The source argues that to bypass the analytical brain, you need to catch it when it's vulnerable.
When its guard is down.
Right. Which brings us to the moment you wake up. Now, when I first read this, I was skeptical.
Why is that?
Well, the idea is to describe your morning in simple English the second you open your eyes. My immediate thought was, I barely know who I am when my alarm goes off, let alone how to conjugate verbs.
That's totally fair. But that groggy transitional state is precisely why the habit is so effective.
Okay, I'm listening.
When you first wake up, your prefrontal cortex, that slow, analytical, overthinking part of the brain we just talked about, is not fully online yet.
So the translation filter is turned off.
Exactly. You are operating mostly on instinct and basic physical needs. You don't have the cognitive bandwidth to translate complex thoughts, even if you wanted to.
The source is hyper-specific about the execution here, too. They warn against trying to sound intelligent.
Yes, this is crucial.
They literally say, do not wake up and try to construct a thought like, I am currently experiencing a slight amount of lethargy due to insufficient sleep.
Which would just exhaust you more.
Right. You're supposed to think, I'm tired, it's bright, I need water.
The trap of intellectual ego is a massive barrier in language learning.
Intellectual ego, I like that.
Well, as adults, we are used to expressing highly nuanced, sophisticated ideas in our native language.
We want to sound smart.
Exactly. It is incredibly frustrating to be reduced to the linguistic level of a toddler, but you have to surrender to that simplicity.
Because otherwise you fail.
Right. If you attempt to form a complex subordinate clause before your brain is fully awake, you will immediately hit a cognitive wall, get frustrated, and revert to your native language.
I suppose that makes sense. I mean, even in my native language, I don't wake up delivering a Shakespearean soliloquy.
Most people don't.
I'm usually just thinking coffee. Now, cold.
Exactly. And by utilizing short, primitive English sentences for those primal morning thoughts, you achieve something remarkable.
What's that?
You are creating a direct neural link between a physical sensation like thirst or grogginess and the English language with absolutely zero translation in between.
So bypassing the native language entirely.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are teaching your brain that English is the immediate functional language of your basic survival.
Which sets the stage for what the source calls environmental anchoring.
Right, moving from internal to external.
Exactly. Once you are out of bed and moving around,
Yeah.
the material suggests you start naming the objects in your environment.
Just simple labeling.
Yeah. You are making coffee, you look at the mug, and you quietly think, mug. You walk outside, you see a car, you think, car.
It seems almost too basic to be effective, doesn't it?
It really does. It feels almost silly.
But the underlying mechanism relies on spatial memory. Humans are highly spatial creatures. We remember things much better when they are tied to a physical location.
The source brings up a really compelling example for this. They point out the word receipt.
Ah, yes. The dreaded receipt.
They note that learners constantly forget this word. And it's true, I've seen people struggle to remember what that little piece of paper is called. But you encounter them constantly in daily life.
Think about how traditional vocabulary acquisition works. You sit at a desk looking at a two-dimensional flashcard or a list on a screen.
Totally disconnected from reality.
Right. The word receipt is completely divorced from its real-world context. But if you are standing in a chaotic coffee shop, someone hands you a piece of paper, you feel the texture of it, you hear the background noise.
The espresso machine running in the back.
Exactly. And in that exact moment, you internally label it receipt. Well, you are encoding that vocabulary word with rich sensory and spatial data.
You are turning the world into a massive interactive vocabulary lab. You aren't just memorizing the word, you are experiencing the word.
Precisely. You are bypassing the native language middleman entirely. The visual stimulus of the object directly triggers the English neuron.
And the source goes a step further, right?
Yep.
Once you can label the isolated object, you begin layering it into brief sentences.
Yeah, you add complexity slowly.
So instead of just mug, you progress to this mug is heavy or the coffee is black.
This is how you begin to build syntax organically. You are anchoring adjectives and verbs to the physical reality you are currently occupying.
Okay, so we've woken up, we acknowledge that we are tired and thirsty, and we are walking around labeling our kitchen appliances like a human dictionary.
A very productive morning.
Definitely. But that covers passive observation. The source material pushes us to go deeper into active engagement by activating the inner monologue.
Right, the internal conversation.
This leads to the suggestion of asking yourself simple questions throughout the day.
Moving from observation to inquiry is a significant jump in cognitive complexity. You are generating original thought rather than just reacting to stimuli.
The examples provided are things you'd naturally wonder anyway. What do I need today? Or why is the train late? Or where are my keys?
Normal, everyday thoughts.
But let me play devil's advocate here because this is where I usually fail.
Okay, let's hear it.
Let's say I'm looking for my keys and I want to ask myself, did I leave them in the briefcase? But my brain totally blanks on the English word for briefcase.
You hit a wall.
Exactly. Doesn't that missing puzzle piece bring the whole exercise to a grinding halt? I mean, the frustration alone usually sends me running right back to the comfort of my native tongue.
That is actually the most common point of failure for this specific habit. The perfectionist instinct kicks in, demanding the precise word.
You want to get it exactly right.
Right. But the source material provides a brilliant workaround for this, which they call the rule of substitution.
Okay, how does substitution solve the blanking issue without just teaching you to settle for a poor vocabulary?
Well, the rule dictates that if you lack the precise word, you immediately substitute it with a broader, simpler word that you do know, without breaking the English thought process to look it up.
So skip the dictionary app.
Entirely. If you don't know briefcase, you use bag. If you want to say, I am exhausted, but the word escapes you, you instantly substitute, I am very tired.
Or if I forget appointment, I just use meeting.
Exactly. Keep the momentum going.
I see the utility in the moment, but doesn't that inherently limit your growth? If I'm always substituting bag for briefcase, how do I ever learn briefcase?
That is a very valid concern, but you have to prioritize the immediate goal here. The goal of this specific exercise is momentum, not accuracy.
Momentum.
Think of your second language like a plumbing system. Right now, the pipes are rusty and the water barely flows. If you stop the water every time you encounter a slight blockage to perfectly polish a single valve, you will never get any water pressure.
That makes a ton of sense.
Substitution keeps the water flowing. It builds the neurological habit of circumlocution, the ability to talk around a missing word, which is a hallmark of true fluency.
Because even native speakers forget words sometimes.
Constantly. Once that continuous flow of thought is established, then you can go back and upgrade the vocabulary. But you have to build the highway before you worry about the quality of the cars driving on it.
That reframing actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You are optimizing for speed and flow, not a perfect dictionary audit.
Exactly.
And that prioritization of flow over complexity connects directly to another major theme in the source, the absolute necessity of thinking in short, fragmented sentences.
This touches on a really fascinating area of linguistics regarding the difference between written prose and spoken reality.
The source states it bluntly. They say learners try to think like a textbook when they need to think like a human.
We are conditioned to overcomplicate.
We are. They point out that natural internal thoughts aren't grand paragraphs. They are choppy. I'm hungry. This is taking too long. That guy is loud.
Right. We have been conditioned by years of schooling to believe that complex syntax equals intelligence.
We want to sound like an essay.
Yes. When we read a novel, we see complex sentences with semicolons and multiple dependent clauses. But if you were to actually record and transcribe the natural, unedited spoken dialogue of native speakers, or even map your own internal monologue,
It would probably look terrible on paper.
oh, you would find it is highly fragmented, repetitive, and heavily reliant on context.
It's a mess.
Incredibly messy. Spoken language is about immediate utility.
Right.
If you are frustrated waiting in line at the bank, your internal monologue does not say, I am experiencing a profound sense of impatience due to the agonizingly slow pace of this queue.
Right, your brain just fires off, this is ridiculously slow. I am annoyed.
Hey.
So by giving ourselves permission to use that exact same choppy, simplistic structure in English, we are actually mimicking native cognition much more accurately than if we try to build a textbook sentence.
Precisely. You drastically lower the cognitive barrier to entry. Short sentences process faster.
And there's less to mess up.
Exactly. They have less grammatical scaffolding that can collapse and cause you to lose your train of thought.
Lowering that barrier seems to be the key to making these habits actually stick. And speaking of habits that stick because they are tied to physical reality, there is one recommendation in the notes that I initially laughed at.
Oh, which one?
But the more I think about it, the more brilliant it seems. The source suggests narrating your routine physical tasks out loud.
Ah, the kinesthetic approach to language.
Yes. The example they gave was a learner who confessed to narrating the process of cooking eggs every single morning.
I love that example.
And they didn't even do it purely for the English practice. They did it because they were paranoid about burning breakfast.
Well, they're basically coaching themselves.
Right, so they are standing at the stove muttering, okay, turn on the stove, not too hot, crack the eggs, don't forget the salt, where is the spatula?
It sounds eccentric to an outside observer, but from a neurolearning perspective, this might be the most potent habit on the entire list.
Really? More than the others?
Yes, because it naturally leverages spaced repetition.
Let's dive into that, because usually when I hear spaced repetition, I think of flashcard app algorithms popping up a word just before I'm about to forget it. How does cooking eggs replicate an app algorithm?
Well, think about the nature of a routine chore, whether it's making eggs, folding laundry, or washing the car.
It's the same thing every time.
Exactly. It is a sequence of actions that you perform in roughly the same order, at roughly the same intervals, day after day. Because the physical actions repeat predictably, the language required to describe them also repeats predictably.
So you are building your own organic algorithm.
Precisely. You don't need an app to remind you to practice the vocabulary for cooking. Your morning hunger does it for you.
That is so smart.
And furthermore, by narrating physical actions as you perform them, you are engaging the motor cortex.
The physical movement part of the brain.
Yes. You are linking the abstract English word stir to the physical rotation of your wrist. This dual encoding auditory from hearing yourself speak and kinesthetic from performing the action creates incredibly robust memory pathways.
Because it's hitting multiple senses at once.
Exactly. It anchors the grammar to physical movement.
It's literal muscle memory. You are training the language into your body, not just your brain.
That's a perfect way to summarize it.
Okay, so we have built the foundation. We are waking up without overthinking. We are labeling our environment, substituting words to keep the momentum going, and we are talking to ourselves while we scramble eggs.
We are well on our way.
We are. But let's look at how we manage the heavier cognitive load of the day. How do we handle our actual responsibilities and our emotional fluctuations in English?
This is where we attempt to integrate the second language into our executive functioning.
Which is what exactly?
That's the part of the brain that plans, organizes, and executes tasks. The management center, basically.
Okay. And the source outlines a very specific method for this, translating your daily to-do list.
Yes, but with a massive caveat.
Right. They are emphatic that these lists must be tiny. We are talking 3 to 5 items maximum. Send the report, buy milk, call Sarah.
The constraint on the size of the list is absolutely critical.
Because we want to avoid the crash again.
Exactly. If you attempt to translate a 20-item complex project management list into a language you are just learning to think in, you will induce cognitive overload and abandon the practice immediately.
When I was reading this, I realized why it's so clever. You aren't actually asking the learner to build a new habit from scratch, which requires a lot of willpower.
No, not at all.
Most people already mentally or physically outline what they need to do that day anyway. You are just swapping out the operating system of an existing habit.
I love that analogy.
You are running the exact same productivity software, but you are changing the default language setting.
That's a highly accurate way to frame it. Behavioral psychology tells us that the easiest way to adopt a new behavior is to minimize the friction of starting.
Make it as easy as possible.
Right. Since the habit of making the list already exists, the friction is almost zero.
And what I found fascinating is what happens after you make the list. The source notes that the real practice comes when you interact with the list throughout the day.
To follow through.
Yeah, you look down at buy milk after leaving the store, and you naturally generate a highly authentic, instantaneous thought. Done.
Or finished.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or you look at call Sarah and think, not yet, I'll do that later.
It moves the language from the realm of abstract academic knowledge to applied utility.
It becomes useful in the moment.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You aren't reciting the conjugation of the verb to call for a test. You are actively utilizing the imperative form to command your own behavior.
Which tricks the brain, right?
It does. This signals to your brain that English is a tool for navigating reality, which drastically increases the brain's willingness to retain the vocabulary.
Utility over theory. I love that.
Yeah.
But what happens when reality doesn't cooperate with a to-do list?
Which happens basically every day.
Right. The source transitions into handling unpredictable moments, specifically through emotional reactions. And I have to say, this part of the material completely changed how I view vocabulary acquisition.
You are referring to training yourself to react to minor daily frustrations in English.
Yes, they describe generating authentic, emotional reactions to small negative events. If you step outside and it starts pouring rain, you train yourself to immediately think or say, great timing, with heavy sarcasm.
A very natural reaction.
Or if you spill coffee on your desk, you say, what a mess. But the example that has permanently burned itself into my brain, the one they use to define the exact level of frustration they mean, is dropping your spoon into your soup.
Oh, it is a wonderfully visceral example of a micro-frustration.
It really is. It's not a life-altering tragedy, but in that moment when the spoon sinks below the broth, you feel a very specific, pure annoyance.
Oh, it's infuriating.
The source argues that training yourself to think, I am so annoyed, in English, in that exact moment, is incredibly powerful. Why does emotional language stick so much better than neutral language?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped cluster of nuclei deep within the brain's temporal lobe.
Okay, the biology of it.
Yes. It is primarily responsible for processing emotions, particularly fear and frustration.
The brain's alarm system, essentially.
Correct. When you experience a genuine emotional reaction, even a mild one, like the soup incident your amygdala activates, it triggers a cascade of neurochemicals, including adrenaline and cortisol.
So your body is physically reacting.
Exactly. Evolutionarily, this system is designed to make you remember dangerous or frustrating situations so you can avoid them in the future.
To keep us alive.
Right. The emotion acts like a biochemical highlighter pen across your memory systems, particularly the hippocampus, signaling, this moment is important, retain this data.
So when you force the English phrase, I am annoyed, into that highly charged moment, the brain highlights the English words right alongside the frustration.
Exactly. You are piggybacking on a biological imperative.
That is wild.
Furthermore, emotional reactions are by nature instantaneous. If you drop a glass and it shatters, you don't have the luxury of time to pause, access your prefrontal cortex, formulate a sentence in your native language about the shattered glass, and then translate it.
You just react.
The reaction is an immediate reflex. By repeatedly forcing that reflex to be in English, saying, oh no, or come on, you are proving to your nervous system that English can operate at the speed of instinct.
You are completely bypassing the translation centers.
You are essentially hacking your own fight or flight response to sneak vocabulary in through the back door.
That is an apt metaphor.
Yeah.
Hacking the fight or flight response.
It works remarkably well.
But there's a missing piece here, I think. Reacting emotionally is great, but how do we quickly build the inventory of phrases needed to react appropriately without reverting to slow translation?
The source has an answer for that.
They offer a solution that seems to be a major shortcut in linguistics. They call it shadowing, but specifically shadowing chunks of language.
The concept of language chunking fundamentally upends how most of us were taught a second language in school.
Right, because we are traditionally taught word by word. You learn a list of pronouns, a list of verbs, and a list of nouns, and then you're taught the grammatical glue to stick them all together.
which is a very slow way to build a sentence.
It is. But the source says to abandon that and focus on blocks of meaning. Phrases like at the moment, or it depends, or I'm not sure yet.
We really need to examine working memory to understand why chunking is so vital here.
Okay, lay it on me.
So in the 1950s, a cognitive psychologist named George Miller proposed that the average human working memory can only hold about 7 items, plus or minus 2, at any given time.
7 items. That's a tiny bottleneck.
It is remarkably small. Now, imagine you are trying to say, I am not sure yet, using the traditional word-by-word method. Your brain has to retrieve the pronoun I, the verb am, the nature not, the adjective sure, and the adverb yet. It then has to check the subject-verb agreement and the word order.
Which is basically all 7 slots right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have just maxed out your working memory capacity on a single, simple sentence. It feels exhausting because it is physically exhausting.
You're doing heavy computational math just to express a basic doubt.
Exactly. But psycholinguistics reveals that native speakers do not construct sentences word by word.
We don't.
Not at all. They rely heavily on prefabricated lexical bundles, chunks.
Ah, the chunks.
When a native speaker says, I'm not sure yet, they aren't assembling 5 individual words in their head. They are deploying one single prepackaged unit of meaning.
So the phrase, I'm not sure yet, occupies only 1 slot in working memory, not 5.
Precisely. You save massive amounts of cognitive space.
To use an analogy, traditional learning teaches you to build a house by manufacturing every single brick yourself, carrying it to the site, and mortaring it into place.
A very slow build.
Yeah, right. But chunking is like ordering large prefabricated walls that you just crane into position.
That's a perfect analogy.
It exponentially increases your processing speed and dramatically reduces cognitive load. When you learn it depends as a single chunk, you never have to waste mental energy worrying about why it takes an S on the end of the verb. You just deploy the wall.
That is a massive shortcut. And it explains why some learners sound so perfectly fluid, even if their total vocabulary isn't actually that huge.
Right, because they have great inventory of chunks ready to go.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've navigated the demands of the day, we've managed our to-do lists, we've reacted to soup-related disasters, and we are deploying prefabricated chunks of language.
A very full day.
But as the day ends, how do we ensure all these micro efforts don't just evaporate overnight? This brings us to the evening routines, focusing on consolidation.
The evening is neurologically distinct from the rest of the day. It is the designated time for data processing and memory consolidation.
The primary habit suggested for this phase is keeping a tiny English diary. And the source leans heavily on the word tiny.
Very tiny.
They suggest writing a maximum of 3 lines. Something as mundane as, today I was stressed, but I finished the report. I had pasta for dinner.
Nothing fancy at all.
Right. Now, I have to stop here and challenge this because I know myself, and I know a lot of our listeners struggle with this exact thing.
The journaling block.
Yes.
Yeah.
Every time I try to start a diary, I go out and buy a beautiful leather journal. On day 1, I write 3 pages detailing my deepest philosophical thoughts. On day 2, I write a paragraph.
And by day 3?
By day 4, the journal is shoved in a drawer, and I feel guilty looking at it. Isn't a daily writing habit, even a small one, too demanding to sustain?
Your experience is the textbook definition of why ambitious habits fail. You, like most people, are confusing initial enthusiasm with long-term capacity.
But true.
The motivation you feel on day 1 requires a massive amount of activation energy to sustain. When that motivation inevitably wanes, the habit collapses entirely.
So how does a 3-line diary survive that collapse?
The source provides a vital mantra for this, which is, 1 line is enough.
1 line is enough.
This is the ultimate antidote to the perfectionism that kills consistency. By legally binding yourself to the absolute minimum, giving yourself full permission to write, today was fine, and closing the book, considering it a 100% success, you remove the friction.
You make it impossible to fail, basically.
Exactly. Small habits survive because they require almost zero activation energy. You are optimizing for the habit of showing up rather than the volume of output.
Because consistency always beats intensity over a long timeline.
Always. Every single time. And if you analyze the linguistic progression from the morning habits to this evening diary, there's a brilliant structural design at play here.
How so?
Well, in the morning, you were thinking in isolated fragments. I'm tired. Coffee. Now, in the evening diary, you are being asked to connect ideas. Today I was stressed, but I finished the report.
Oh, I see. You were linking them.
You are moving from basic vocabulary to complex sequencing. It perfectly mirrors the brain's increasing capacity to handle cognitive load as it fully awakens and processes the day.
You are slowly turning up the dial on complexity throughout the day.
Exactly.
And that leads us to the final, most passive habit on the list. Reviewing your day in English as you lie in bed before sleep.
Just a silent mental summary.
Right. I have a meeting at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I need to wake up earlier. Why is this specifically positioned right before sleep?
We have to look at brainwave states to understand the power of this habit.
More biology. Let's hear it.
As you lie in the dark, disconnected from external stimuli, your brain transitions from the high-frequency beta waves of waking consciousness into slower alpha and theta waves.
You are powering down.
Yes, you are entering a highly receptive, calm state.
The borders between the conscious and subconscious start to blur a bit.
Exactly. Doing a mental review in this specific state helps internalize the syntax and vocabulary in a zero-pressure environment. There are no social stakes. No one is waiting for you to finish your sentence.
It's just you and your thoughts.
Furthermore, the hippocampus, which plays a major role in transferring data from short-term to long-term memory, is highly active during sleep.
Oh, so timing is everything.
By making English the final cognitive input before that consolidation process begins, you are prioritizing that data for storage. You are signaling to your brain that English is not just an external tool for ordering coffee, but an internal language of reflection and peace.
Wow. Okay, we have traced the entire arc of a day, from waking up and labeling the physical world, to using chunks and emotional tagging, to letting the brain consolidate the data in the dark.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We have the theory down. Now, let's get incredibly pragmatic. How does someone actually start executing this tomorrow without feeling so overwhelmed that they quit by noon? Let's talk about customization and troubleshooting.
Customization is non-negotiable here. If a listener attempts to implement all 10 of these habits simultaneously tomorrow morning, they will experience cognitive burnout within 48 hours.
Guaranteed.
You must scale the application to your current proficiency level.
The source breaks this down into actionable tiers, which I appreciate.
Let's hear them.
If you are a true beginner, maybe you know the vocabulary, but have zero experience actually generating thoughts they suggest, starting with just 3 specific habits.
Keep it manageable.
Right. Habit 1, describing your morning in 3 words. Habit 2, naming physical objects like the receipt. And habit 6, reacting to minor situations with a single phrase.
That is a highly strategic entry point.
It doesn't seem like much, though.
It might not, but naming objects and describing basic morning sensations builds a foundational noun and adjective inventory without requiring any complex grammar. And implementing the emotional reactions begins the process of bypassing the translation center, but only requires memorizing a few short chunks like, oh no, or great. It is high reward with very low cognitive friction.
And if you are at an intermediate level, you can string a sentence together, but you still get that brain freeze buffering wheel in conversation you add in the structural habit.
The organizational stuff?
Yeah, the tiny to-do lists, the 3-line diary, and the bedtime mental review.
The intermediate learner already possesses the vocabulary. Their hurdle is processing speed and sequence manipulation.
Putting the puzzle pieces together faster.
Exactly. The diary and the to-do lists force the learner to use conjunctions, sequence words, and varied tenses to manage their reality. It moves them from passive knowing to active organizing.
So the entry points are clear. But the source also anticipates the inevitable roadblocks, the first of which is the most human problem of all.
Simply forgetting to do it.
Yes, life is chaotic. It is incredibly easy to go 3 days before realizing you haven't thought a single word of English.
The behavioral psychology solution offered here is called habit stacking.
Piggybacking on existing routines.
Precisely. You do not attempt to carve out a new, dedicated time slot for English thinking.
Because that requires willpower.
And willpower is finite. Instead, you anchor the new behavior to a routine you already perform on autopilot.
So you don't set an alarm that says, think in English at 2:0 p.m.
No, alarms just get dismissed.
Right. You say, I will name 5 objects in English while I'm waiting for the shower water to get warm, or I will review my day in English the exact moment I turn off my bedside lamp.
The existing habit turning off the lamp becomes the unavoidable trigger for the new behavior. The neural pathway for the trigger is already deeply established. You are simply attaching a new train car to an existing locomotive.
It removes the need for motivation entirely.
That solves the memory issue completely.
It does. But here's the roadblock I really want to challenge you on, because it is the most controversial point in the source material.
Okay, bring it on.
It is the concept of private practice. The source encourages you to practice forming these thoughts entirely in your own head when no one is judging you.
Right, a safe space.
But my immediate visceral reaction to that is fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of cementing mistakes.
Mhm.
If I am whispering to myself in my kitchen and I am consistently using terrible grammar if I think he goes to work instead of he goes to work 500 times, aren't I just hardwiring mistakes into my brain?
Ah, the classic grammar anxiety.
Yes. My high school language teachers would be horrified by this advice. They told us practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect.
Your high school teachers were operating on an outdated model of language acquisition that prioritizes accuracy over fluency.
Really?
Outdated.
Very much so. We have to draw a hard line between performance and practice. When you are taking an exam or giving a presentation, accuracy matters.
Sure.
But in the generative phase of learning, fear of errors is the single greatest impediment to progress.
But aren't you physically strengthening the neural pathway for the wrong grammar by repeating it? You are strengthening the pathway for production. The problem most learners face isn't that they don't know the rule. It's that the pathway to produce any speech is completely atrophied.
You have to turn the machine on before you can tune it.
You have to get the machinery moving first. Furthermore, the source makes a brilliant observation about the internal monitor here.
What's the internal monitor?
They note that very often you will think the incorrect phrase, he go to work, and a split second later, your brain will flag it. You will internally realize, wait, it should be goes.
But doesn't that just prove I messed up in the first place?
Absolutely not. That delayed realization is literal neurobiological proof of learning.
Proof of learning.
Yes. It means your internal monitoring system, your subconscious grasp of the rules, is actively auditing your output. That moment of self-correction is one of the deepest, most permanent learning events you can experience.
I never thought of it like that.
But here's the catch. You can never experience that powerful moment of self-correction if you are too paralyzed by fear to produce the messy thought in the first place. You have to give yourself the raw material to correct.
That is a massive paradigm shift. You are saying we need to embrace the messiness because the mess is where the learning actually happens.
Exactly. Don't fear the mess. Use it.
Okay, let's look at one final very practical roadblock before we wrap up. Habit 8 relies heavily on shadowing repeating chunks of language out loud to build that motor cortex muscle memory.
A physical vocalization, right?
But social context is a reality. If I am sitting on a crowded subway train, I am not going to start loudly declaring, "It depends. I'm not sure yet." People will think I've lost my mind.
They probably would. But the source provides a highly pragmatic adaptation for social anxiety.
What's the workaround?
If speaking at full volume is socially inappropriate or causes you embarrassment, you whisper.
And if whispering is too weird?
If whispering is still too conspicuous, you silently mouth the words.
Just moving the lips and tongue without activating the vocal cords at all.
Yes. From a neurological standpoint, silently mouthing the words still recruits the motor cortex.
Really? It still counts.
It absolutely still counts. You are still executing the physical choreography of the language, which provides kinesthetic feedback to the brain, even without the auditory component. As the source aptly puts it, we adapt, we don't quit.
We adapt, we don't quit. I love that. I want to quickly review the key vocabulary this source uses to describe the learning process itself, because having the language to describe your journey is powerful.
It gives you a framework.
Exactly. We just debated the merits of private practice, that safe internal sandbox where mistakes are mandatory. We explored the massive cognitive shortcut of using prefabricated chunks
To save working memory.
Yes. We talked about leveraging the automated nature of routine tasks for spaced repetition. We broke down the perfectionism-killing mantra that one line is enough.
The diary rule.
Right. But the phrase that truly binds all this together is the directive to build a connection.
That phrase is the thesis of everything we've discussed today.
It really is.
The ultimate objective is not to memorize a translation dictionary in your head. The objective is to construct a direct, unmediated neural bridge between a raw concept, the physical feeling of exhaustion, the visual reality of a chair, the emotional spike of dropping a spoon, and the English vocabulary.
You are tearing down the toll booth of your native language.
Precisely. You want the thought to travel directly to the destination without stopping for inspection.
So let's bring all this theory back down to earth as we wrap up today's deep dive. The core message extracted from these source notes is incredibly liberating, in my opinion.
It takes the pressure off.
It really does. You do not need a flawless, intimidating 2-hour daily study plan. In fact, that might be actively holding you back.
It probably is.
What you need is consistency, extreme patience with your own messy output, and simple atomic contact with the language. 5 to 10 minutes a day, not done in a block, but spread out over dozens of micro moments, labeling a receipt, reacting to the rain, checking off a tiny to-do list compounds into massive neurological changes over time.
It is the aggregation of marginal gains. 1,000 micro-connections eventually form a fluent mind.
With that in mind, here is my direct challenge to you, the listener. Do not look at this deep dive as a list of 10 things you have to start doing tomorrow morning.
Please don't.
Right. That is the perfect routine myth all over again. Pick just one. Decide right now that tomorrow morning you will simply think 3 words about how you feel when you wake up.
Or decide you will name 5 things on your commute.
Yes, because the only habit that actually matters is the one you are willing to execute.
Start incredibly small, remove the friction, and let the habit expand organically as your confidence grows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we sign off, I want to hand it over to you for a final thought. We've spent the last hour talking about using very simple, direct English to navigate the complex realities of our daily lives.
We have.
But when I was reviewing the notes for today, you brought up a really profound implication about what happens when you actually achieve this.
I did, yes. It connects to a deeply fascinating concept in linguistics and psychology regarding how language doesn't just describe our reality, it shapes it.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
There's a provocative question hidden within these daily habits. If you are a native speaker of a highly complex language, your internal monologue is likely filled with nuanced anxieties, layered overthinking, and complicated emotional baggage.
Oh, absolutely. My brain never stops overcomplicating things.
Right. But if you force yourself through these habits to process a stressful situation using only the basic direct English vocabulary you currently possess, if you can only think, this is bad, I am tired, I need to fix this, what happens to that anxiety? Does the limitation of your second language actually act as an emotional filter? By stripping away your ability to linguistically catastrophize and overcomplicate a problem, does thinking in a simpler second language force you to view your own life more simply?
It almost acts like a forced meditation.
It suggests that learning to think in a new language might not just change how you speak, it might offer a form of linguistic minimalism that brings profound psychological clarity to your day.
That is incredible to think about. The language limitation becomes a feature, not a bug.
Exactly.
So the next time you feel that awful brain freeze, that buffering wheel spinning as you try to construct the perfect, complex thought, just remember that perfection is the enemy. Simplicity is the goal. You aren't trying to sound like a textbook. You're just a person, living your life, reacting to the soup one simple chunk at a time.
Thank you for watching. Keep practicing English every day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.